Preparing engineering students to have leadership skills is needed now more than ever. Graduating students need to be equipped with the skills to solve global challenges such as climate change, water scarcity, and metropolitan congestion.
This is The Uncommon Engineer.
We're just absolutely pleased as punk to have you with us. Please say a few words.
Our guest today on the Uncommon Engineer podcast is Dr. Adjo Amekudzi-Kennedy, leader of the Global Engineering Leadership Minor here at Georgia Tech. She's an associate chair for Global Engineering Leadership and Entrepreneurship and a professor in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Welcome to the program, Adjo.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, in the intro, we talked about the importance of leadership. So it's not just about preparing engineers that know how to solve problems, but preparing them for leadership roles. Can you tell us a little bit about the Global Engineering Leadership Minor and what inspired you to create this program at Tech?
Okay, yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So the Global Engineering Leadership Minor is one of 3 tracks of the Institute's minor in leadership studies. The other tracks are in business management and public policy. And the minor in leadership studies was started between 9 and 10 years ago. About 6 years ago, Wes Winans, who is the leader, the director of the Leadership Education and Development program at Tech, and also directs the minor, approached the chairs of the schools of engineering and had a discussion with them on starting a minor in leadership studies track in the context of engineering and for engineers. And at that time, the chair of the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering was Reggie DeRoche. So he volunteered civil and environmental engineering to do it, and then tasked me to work with a vast array of, and then we looked at the leadership literature. We wanted to understand the different kinds of models that existed, and we dovetailed on the skills model of leadership, because essentially it's a competency-based model that says anybody can learn how to lead. And we wanted to be that broad-based. And so independent of the traits you were born with or your past experience, you can learn to lead and continue to develop those skills and apply them. So we developed the minor, the leadership minor, which has come to be known as fondly known as the Global Engineering Leadership Minor, or GELM, very much to place students in a position, to contribute to leading and also lead in solving our global grand challenges and other societal problems, and also to be able to work effectively across cultures doing this.
You talked about a couple things, and one that really caught my ear was, we often think that, leaders are born that way. You're either a natural leader or you're not. And you really emphasize the importance of, no, we can teach leadership. We can prepare students to be leaders. And I really love to hear a little bit more about that, but also in the global context, what really distinguishes, preparing students to just be leaders versus preparing them to be global leaders?
Identified 4 or 5 main areas that we wanted to cultivate leadership skills around. The first one is just simply knowledge of leadership theory and concepts. We felt the students need to know that. The second one is problem solving, which is evolving into really problem discovery and solving, because those two things are important. And when you look at the education literature, you see it increasingly focuses on both problem finding and solving. Sometimes people call it problem discovery. I'm using that interchangeably here. And problem solving finding has to do with, are we doing the right problem? So it has more to do with effectiveness. Whereas problem solving is, are we doing the problem right? So essentially, I mean, if we could be doing the problem right without doing the right problem, and that's not very effective, but highly efficient. So we want to do both. And then the interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, right, is the third. Cultivating systems thinking, systems analysis thinking, big picture thinking around the grand challenges is the fourth. And then cross-cultural competencies is the fifth. And so we built the leadership program on these five pillars, these five foundations. You see, we added the cross-cultural piece because we realize it's increasingly a cross-cultural world. And then the technical piece is the problem-solving finding. The people skills, social judgment skills is the intrapersonal. And then the ideas, conceptual skills are the systems thinking piece.
I'm really interested to learn more about the students. And if you could tell us, a bit about the students that are in the minor, and what it might take for them to further consider the minor, and then what they do after they graduate.
Our students go everywhere. We have students who go into consulting when they are done. One of them went to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering. Actually, I think that was a mechanical engineer, Chang, who did that. Some of our students go into nonprofits. One of our students, I remember, went to teach for America. He's going to do that for 2 years and then come back. He has a business consulting degree, business consulting program with Deloitte here in Atlanta. He was a student from industrial engineering. And then a lot of our students go to graduate school. So they go everywhere. The students in the minor, I think they are remarkable individuals. They are, especially when they come back from the global practicum. I've always said, when they come back, they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They are both simultaneously more confident and less confident. Let me explain. And I think it's a very good combination. They come back and you see that they are less confident because they realize, wow, it's a vast world out there. The problems are varied and they may be so different than what they've seen. They understand the nuances of culture affect the way people think about problems. They affect solution pathways. I mean, they have matured in some remarkable ways that make them humble. Okay, so that's what I mean by the less confident part. But simultaneously, they are more confident because they've gone into situations where they knew nothing about the culture maybe before they went, except what they'd learned about. And they've had to figure out how to work in those contexts, first of all, and then secondly, to work effectively, right, while interacting with people who are foreign to them, but they grow to understand, they grow to learn their culture, and so on. And then they actually contribute at a high level. So I think they come out feeling, I can go anywhere and do this. And so they are more confident. And so it's a knockout combination, I always say. And I think our students, they are ready to do anything. I mean, they inspire me.
That is not really that much different or separate from your own research, and that your research is concentrated on sustainability, sustainable infrastructure. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you and your students are doing, and why is sustainable infrastructure and development more important than ever?
Okay. So thank you for that question. I think I can talk about sustainable development and infrastructure maybe for the rest of the day. So let me try to boil it down. So I do think that sustainable development has always been important. I mean, if we go back historically, there are a number of societies which failed because they hadn't figured out how to develop sustainably, and they went out of existence. So it's always been an important element. But perhaps the sustainable development risks, the risks to sustainable development have changed over time. Recently, one of the critical risks to sustainable development is resilience, is system resilience, because when we look at the changing climate, the hazards associated with it, and the fact that they are changing in frequency, they are more frequent. If you look at climate hazards, the magnitude is higher, and they really wreak havoc and create a lot of damage when we have acute shocks like flooding, hurricanes, storm surge, fires, all these climate-related hazards occurring. And we are talking about billions and billions of dollars of damage. And so it is always important, I think, for us to think about sustainable development. And if you look at the practical applications, they usually focus on economic advancement. So if we're talking about transportation infrastructure or any other kind of infrastructure, we want to develop it in a way that it helps advance the economy, makes us more competitive economically. It should protect the environment, because ultimately, if we don't protect the environment, that becomes the constraint to developing sustainably, and then becomes the risk, right? And then certainly it should advance social quality of life. What does that mean? We are talking about access to health, access to jobs, basic access to basic human services. And so if we're doing it right, we should be doing all of these, and we should be leaving no one behind. Okay. In other words, infrastructure is an enabler. It enables us to accomplish different things. And so it creates wealth. And you can really see that if you look at, the World Bank has done studies on this. You look at correlations between different types of infrastructure, quantity and quality. You see that they correlate very highly with the gross domestic product, for example. So it's quite aligned. So essentially, if we have different levels of service for infrastructure, or different standards of infrastructure in different areas or for different communities, then it means we are really going to leave some people behind. Okay, because infrastructure is an enabler of wealth. Now, layer this with resilience, the fact that we have increasing exposure to different kinds of hazards. And, I'm focusing on climate hazards, but there are also man-made hazards, right? And so over time, we see that resilience has also become incorporated into the definition of sustainable infrastructure.
Well, Adjo, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our conversation. I just quickly reflecting on really the 4 or 5 different things we've talked about, really spanning all aspects of not only civil engineering, civil and environmental engineering, but engineering as a whole. And you're right at the middle of all of those. And I can't thank you enough for the time today, but more importantly, for everything that you're doing for your students, for your school, for Georgia Tech, to make it a better place. We're really lucky to have you in our community, and I can't wait to work with you more. So thanks so much for coming today on The Uncommon Engineer.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate all you are doing to advance several of the things we talked about in the College of Engineering.